Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Wednesday, and all of our guests today are brought to you by our title sponsor, Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. NHL Draft Day. NHL Entry Draft.
Fun day. Fun day for all.
I grew up at a time when they called it just the NHL Draft. Now it's the Entry Draft.
Yeah, the NHL Draft.
Used to have the supplemental draft, expansion draft, all sorts of drafts going on.
Yeah.
It's a draft going on in here. Have to turn the air conditioning off.
It's cold in here. It's like freezing.
Jeff Paterson joining us now from Sekeres and Price. Jeff, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I'm excellent, Donnie, and hi, Rick. I love draft day. There's just something about optimism and renewal, and the fact that I just love all the kids in their fresh suits and their freshly pressed, white shirts. And I don't know. I've covered a bunch of them. I go back to the first one ever that I went to in person at BC Place in 1990, and then I've had the chance to cover a whole bunch. Would love to be in Nashville. Looks like everybody's having fun there, but there's just something about this fact that optimism abounds across the league, and every team walks away thinking that they've had the best draft of the bunch. Of course, it's just a starting point for all these players, and it ultimately doesn't matter where you're selected. It's your entry point to the National Hockey League, and then what you do with it from there is up to you.
That was an extremely significant draft, 1990, in Canucks history. Peter Nedved, second overall. The Canucks passed on Jaromir Jagr. And I always say, Jeff, people can criticize that draft pick. The place went nuts when they picked Peter Nedved. Everybody in that building, I was there as well, loved that pick. Have I got that right?
Yeah, I think as time has marched on, though, we focus so much on Nedved and the fact that he went ahead of Jaromir Jagr, and that is inexcusable, knowing what Jagr did. But the Canucks had 3 picks in the first 23 that year, Donnie, and they missed on Marty Brodeur and Keith Tkachuk as well. Yeah. Like, it could have absolutely been a franchise-altering draft. They got Sean Antosky. They got Yuri Slager. Yeah. They all played for the Canucks, obviously. But, just some absolute legends of the game in that draft class. And, of course, it was supposed to be at the Pacific Coliseum, but there was a labor issue, and they couldn't run the risk of having it disrupted. So they had to pick up and move on downtown and hold an NHL draft at BC Place Stadium.
But it really worked. And I always remember Pat Quinn at the podium just blown away by the size of the crowd. It was, like I say, a real significant draft in Canucks history, though it didn't work out the way they would have wanted it to. Were you surprised yesterday to hear Patrick Allvin say they're sticking at 11? Because last week, around this time, midweek, he seemed open to moving up or down.
Yeah, mildly, but I think it tells you that in that week since, he probably did some tire kicking and made some phone calls and just found out that the price of moving up was prohibitive. And of course, the Canucks don't have a second rounder, and those are such big pieces of currency in and around the draft. And we've already seen a bunch of them move here in the last 24 hours, on the weekend as well, with Arizona picking up Sean Durzi for a second rounder. So, that's part of it. And I think for the Vancouver Canucks, it was just this draft is so deep, and it's just going to be fascinating to me because teams behind the Canucks are going to get really good players as well. And I think they recognize that if they just sit on 11, they're going to get a good player. Listening to Allvin yesterday and reading between the lines, it does feel like they are going to walk away with one of these defensemen that you guys have been talking about, and really everybody's been talking about. Most years I'm down with best player available. I think this time around, given their needs, and they're so clearly defined as defensemen, particularly on the right side, and players up the middle in the system, that I think it's the best player available at one of those premium positions. And I don't know, a total gut feeling here for me. Maybe it's watching you guys for the last week and Ricky reporting that it started with I probably started before the dinner in Buffalo at the Combine, but I don't know. I just keep coming back to Tom Willander as the guy that I'm expecting the Vancouver Canucks to select. And, as I read more about him, and I'm not a prospects guru, there are so many people that do good work in that sphere now that, people I trust that have watched some of the grainy video from some of those rinks over in Europe. And, that's not an easy thing, but so many people putting in the hours on the scouting front. But Tom Willander, you've got a Swedish general manager in Patrick Allvin. We know that Thomas Gradin over the years has unearthed all sorts of Swedes for the Canucks. Lander played in Rogla, the program that Nils Höglander was drafted out of a couple of years ago. They took a Swede last year with their first round pick, and those are all just connecting dots. But right shot defenseman, 6'1", 180 pounds right now, but he's a teenager. He'll fill out there. Top end comparisons to a Charlie McAvoy. I've seen Rasmus Anderson's name. I saw somebody say kind of a Dan Hamhuis, and a guy that just quietly goes about his business, but is really proficient in all areas. Maybe a little more offensive upside than Hamhuis, although Hamhuis had a couple of close to 40-point seasons in the National Hockey League. Nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, I mean, look, they need help on the blue line. And it's been a while since they've used top end pick Quinn Hughes back in 2018. It just feels like it's time. And I don't know. The more I go through this exercise, I just keep thinking that this is the guy that they're going to wind up with. And I think they'll be pretty happy if they do draft Tom Lander.
Okay, Jeff, let's look a little bit ahead because July 1st is Saturday. You wrote an article. There's a buzz about Ian Cole in Vancouver. You mentioned the penalty killing and how good of a penalty killer. I talked last week about when the Canucks look to July 1st, they want to get good penalty killers. They can't be dead last in the league in penalty killing year after year after year. But you had some good stats on Ian Cole killing penalties?
Yeah, and just further to that, I wrote a piece this morning at the Hockey News that's up there now, looking at the schedule that came out yesterday, and I know you guys said you're going to talk about that a little bit later on. Just keep this in mind. We know the Canucks had the worst penalty kill in the National Hockey League last season. It was better under Rick Tocchet, but in 36 games under Tocchet, it still was under 80%. It was 21st in the National Hockey League, so there's still plenty of room for improvement. The first 14 games out of the gate for the Vancouver Canucks this coming season, they're going to see 9 top 10 power plays in the NHL from last year. Oh, my
goodness.
And 3 of them against the Oilers. In the first dozen games, they see McDavid and Draisaitl in the Oilers power play that ran at 32%. They're going to have to be hoping that some of these red-hot power plays from last year, maybe it doesn't carry over, maybe they're a little sluggish out of the gate. Whatever the case. I mean, there was already going to be pressure on the Canucks penalty kill, and now just looking at who they face, the Leafs and Tampa and Ottawa, Florida, the Rangers, all top 10 power plays last year, and 3 against the Oilers in the first dozen games. So that's going to be an absolute challenge. Now, Thatcher Demko, if he's healthy and back, that should help. Filip Hronek, if Ilya Mikheyev is up to speed from the start of the season, all those things should help them be a little bit better. But I'm with you, Rick, as they go into free agency, if they're going to spend money, there has to be a premium on some guys that can do that. And Ian Cole, at the age of 34, he led Tampa in shorthanded ice time last year and was second only to Eric Chernak in shorthanded ice time per game. But that was the top penalty killing duo for the Tampa Lightning, a team that has Victor Hedman and Mikhail Sergachev, and they were pretty proficient. And so this guy's been doing this for a while. And the other thing is, you connect dots in this business. Ian Cole won a pair of Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh with Rick Tocchet on the bench, Patrick Allvin, Derek Clancy, Jim Rutherford. Like, they know this guy. They know him well. He's had success with them. So, yeah, I think that, it feels like, I know you reported it, Rick, and it just kind of feels like this is one that certainly don't sleep on as the Canucks head to the weekend here. I guess it's always a question of the price point and term at the age of 34. I don't know that you want to commit a ton to Ian Cole, but they don't need power play guys. They don't need offense out of them. They've got Peters, they've got Hronek. They need somebody that can come in and log minutes on the penalty kill and do it successfully. And I do think that Ian Cole can check some boxes for the Vancouver Canucks in that regard.
And third-line center is going to be a defensive-minded third-line center. On July 1st, they go after as well.
Jeff, you alluded to the Canucks schedule. It dropped, as the kids say, yesterday. The entire NHL schedule did. Canucks at home to Edmonton, October 11th. Then a 5-game road trip, similar to last year when they started 0-5-2 to start the season. Too many road games too soon?
Yeah, I don't understand this love affair with the back-end loaded home games, a 9-game homestand at one point in the month of March. And that's great if those games mean anything, but we know for too long now that the whole thing of meaningful games in March, raise that bar. And so I don't know what goes into it. Obviously, building availability, and it's not easy to put a schedule together, but I just would have thought after the last couple of years, and particularly last year, where they went over on that first road trip and came home and had jerseys thrown on the ice, I would have thought that the Canucks would have lobbied the league to start with a few more at home, try to get their footing, and then head out on the road. You're going to hear from the Canucks about bonding and gelling and all that kind of stuff, but Obviously, that didn't happen, or not enough of it last year when they had that road trip. But remember, too, they had leads in all those games. They just didn't finish them very well. So, yeah, I'm a little surprised. And also, there's a stretch in February where they play 8 of 10 on the road. That's before the 9-game homestand. So, one of these years, a back-end loaded home schedule will help the Vancouver Canucks. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but man, it puts pressure on them. And we know that there's going to be a ton of pressure right off the hop. Now, a couple of things work in their favor in that regard. Training camp is longer than usual, so Rick Tocchet's going to have a few more days on ice to work with his players. We know that he has urged them to get back into town earlier than before, so hopefully some informal workouts ahead of training camp. The preseason is shorter than usual, and I'm okay with that, but that means more practice time for Tocchet. And then in the first 14 games, only one set of back-to-backs, and those are they're on home ice, actually. So, again, I think there's practice time there for Tocchet, and I would advise him to use some of that practice time on the penalty kill. The other thing, too, is with just the one back-to-back in the first 14 games, I would expect that you will see an awful lot of Thatcher Demko in the early going as the Vancouver Canucks try to, solidify their start to the season and not fall off the pace early on as they have in too many recent seasons.
It's like Christmas for so many hockey fans and reporters out there, Jeff. Have a great day today. It's going to be fun.
It should. All right, guys.
You bet.